pay up to 8% presently, but this could go up to 10%. So basically for teachers, it sounds like it's only a 2% increase. Is that correct?
No, it is not correct.
Okay.
The question is, for teachers, isn't this really just a 2% increase in the amount that they pay? The law requires 10% of the pension contribution to be made by the employee.
Right.
The law also allows the employer to pick up a portion or all of that 10%. So what it sounds to me like you're finding, where teachers are paying 8% right now, that's because the employer is picking up the other 2%. And Senate Bill 5 and a yes vote on issue 2 would say, no more. You're going to pay the 10%, and the school district in that circumstances is saving that 2%.
All right, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to cut off the questions now. Will you be able to stay?
I'll stay.
Okay, he'll be available for some questions afterward. I know there's a lot of questions, but we need to, in the interest of time, we need to move on. So our next speaker is Bill Albright from the Ohioans to Preserve Healthcare, and he will be speaking to us on issue 3.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Bill Albright. I'm the Northeast Ohio Regional Director for Ohioans for Healthcare Freedom. We also work with Issue 2 in the state of Ohio. I'm going to talk to you about Issue 3, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about Issue 2, more from a campaign perspective of what we're seeing, what's going on. Issue 3, a lot of people probably in this room had a lot to do with it getting on the ballot. The Ohio Project did a lot in terms of gathering signatures. It is a proposed state constitutional amendment that says the federal government does not have the right to force you to buy health care if you do not want it, nor do they have the right to fine you if you don't purchase it. We use the buzzword Obamacare. It's an okay word in this crowd here, but it varies. Once it's fully implemented, if you do not purchase the mandated insurance, you will be fined. This is a pretty much just like Issue 1. It's a straightforward bill. It's a small bill. It comes down to personal choice. Obviously, we get into legality issues in terms of the federal government mandating a private citizen to purchase a specific product from state to state. So that's why this bill is small, because in the grand scheme of things, there's only so much that we can do as a state to combat the Obamacare. From a campaign perspective, the one question was asked whether or not Issue 3 is also connected to Issue 2. It is not in an official way, but it is because, I'm going to touch upon a couple things. There was questions about funding for the issues as well. One of the problems we have with Issue 2 and Issue 3 is we do not have a membership group that we can assess to pay for our campaigns. Mr. Eklund was correct. If you go to the Secretary of State's office and you look up the financial reports for the campaign for the opposition of Issue 2, 90% is paid for by union membership outside of the state of Ohio. We do not have the luxury to assess anybody. So in terms of funding, we rely on people like you who are here at 7:48 on a weekday just to get involved with your community. The unions do not. The unions have that luxury where they can just automatically assess their memberships and pay for the campaign. That's important because obviously we are on an uphill battle in terms of funding commercials, getting the correct message. On Issue 2, we are currently 2 points behind in polling. About a month and a half, 2 months ago, we were in double digits behind. This is all because of message. The things that Mr. Eklund had pointed out, you've seen the commercials, fire truck rolls up to a burning house, nobody gets out, this is going to happen everywhere. This is not the case. There is so much misinformation on purpose when you talk to I'm going to be broad, when you talk to liberals and Democrats, and it comes down and you use the facts, and you've heard the numbers already of how it's going to save the state of Ohio. We've seen school districts in Wisconsin who passed a similar bill, a watered-down version of what we have in the state of Ohio with Senate Bill 5. That's what it was referred to when it was in the legislative process. Now that it's in law, and now it's an issue 2. We have already seen school districts that are freeing up millions of dollars that they didn't have before. And so what we are fighting are emotions. We're fighting scare tactics. This is very hard to do when you're coming down 90 out of Cleveland. I'm stationed out of Akron. You know, the first thing you see is make sure Ohio has safe communities. Vote no on 2. There's no facts there. There's no resource to say how this is going to help our local communities. It's scare tactics. From a campaign standpoint, right now today, we're only a couple points behind, and that's because of the message. When I go door to door and talking to people, issue 3, let me get back to how it was connected. The unions, Democrats, and liberals have the motivation to come out and vote in big numbers because they see this as an attack on their livelihoods. Nobody needs to motivate them to make sure they go out and vote. They will vote, I assure you that. What we have the problem with is making sure we have our Republicans, conservatives, and Tea Party groups to be equally enthused. That was the other reason issue 3 is important, why it was also put on the ballot timing-wise right now. This is an issue that's important to conservatives, Tea Parties, and Republicans. This generates enthusiasm. Make sure they come out to the polls and they support issue 3, because if they're going to support issue 3, they will in fact support issue 2. That's how they're connected. They're not connected in an official way, but they're connected out of motivation in terms of politics. I don't want to say politics as a negative term, but campaigning. Making sure people come out and vote. That's how those are connected. Again, we're only 2 points behind on this issue, but when I go door to door across Northeast Ohio and I talk to people, I had 3 people the other day that I had talked to. They're like, oh, you don't need to sell me. I'm on board with the governor. You know, I think the way our state is going with the unions, that this bill needs to be passed. Trust me. You had my vote no on issue 2. Don't worry. I'm voting no. Sir, that's not what I actually want you to do. And that's one of the other things that we see. That because this is a repeal of a law, you would naturally, if you know nothing else about politics or the issues, you would assume you're going to the ballot to vote no on a repeal. And it's the opposite. We are voting yes to retain it as law. That's part of the misconception. The other part is the scare tactics that the left is using. Once I go door to door and I use the same things that Mr. Eklund talked about, 15% for our health care premium, 10% of your pension must be contributed by the employee. This allows our local municipalities, our villages, our townships, and our state to have more financial control over our money. I had a gentleman argue, well, talking about binding arbitration, well, if we're going to do the opposite and allow our city council members to make more of a deciding factor, aren't you just essentially arguing for the opposite? Well, yes, I am. But at the end of the day, our local city council members represent us and what's in our best interest. I'm completely okay with that happening. We, at the end of the day, are not trying to punish teachers, firemen, our safety forces at all. We're trying to do what's best for Ohio. We can no longer fund things that should have not been funded in the first place. We're not trying to, and this bill does not, a lot of people, the other person I talked to said, oh, well, this is horrible for all unions. This isn't all unions. You know, your UAW, your rubber workers, your pipe fitters, they're not going to be touched by this. This is only public union employees whose benefits and pay are paid for by taxpayer money. And we're asking them to pay a little bit more of what they're already getting. We're not cutting their benefits. We're not reducing them in any way. We're not providing less in terms of their pension. We're just asking them to pay more for what they're getting. We're paying for benefits to public union employees that we ourselves do not receive in our own jobs. And that's what this is about at the end of the day, is making sense. If we have X amount of dollars and we can't pay for Y, then we need to not have Y. We need to make sure that everything at the end of the day makes sense. When I talk to people, issue 3 is simple. It comes down to you having a choice for yourself to be able to make a decision what's best for your family, what's best for your children. And instead of having a bureaucratic organization from the federal government tell you that this one-size-fits-all healthcare plan is going to be good for you, but it's also going to be perfect for you and you and you. That's not how healthcare is. When the president talks about healthcare, we have 30 million uninsured Americans in the country. That number is inflated because he's also including people such as myself,